Okay, good. We are up to Ahmed Pepe's paragraph beginning of Bira Inyan. So yesterday we began the Maimah, and we've explained how the shit of Midas Harachamim is the pshat, that whereas when the world was created, Midas Hadin, the Eir was Mitzumtzum B'Yoser, and Malchus functioned as a way of being Mitzamtzim U'Mailim U'Master on the Eir of Zah and the Eir Shalamayla Mimena. That's what Malchus did. With Shittat Midas Harachamim is the pshat that Malchus now gets transformed to, instead of being a shield as a concealment on the Eir, it functions as a means by which to be Megala the Eir, that the Eir should be Nisgala to the Mokim Haroi in the right way, in the right place. So that function of Malchus as a source of Tzimtzum and Helam Vehester has now been completely overridden. That's what we said last time. And we try to emphasize how this is a particular gang, this is a particular way of thinking, it's a certain perception about the various virtues and qualities of things, whereas Eir here is seen as virtuous, as ideal, as desirous, and Tzimtzum and Helam is seen as a negative thing. It's a much better situation where you have the shit of Midas Harachamim, you don't have the Toyu Vayu V'Cheshech, you don't have the Gimel Klips Atzmeyos, which are an outcome of Bereshis Bar Elikim. Now you have Yem Asais Havaya Elikim, and everything is Begilim. And the course is Begilim. That's the suggestion. So the problem we have with that, or the issue that needs to be resolved, is how all of a sudden does Malchus change its spots. Till now we've said its function is to be Mailim or Master. Right?
Yeah.
But now it seems to be being Megala. So what is Malchus now? What are the Isis Hadibur of Malchus? What exactly is? How does it just manage to change? And that's what we're going to be explaining now. We're going to have sort of categories of and different examples, and within examples we're going to have different examples. Things are going to be split into two and two, and so just I will point out to you as we go along, but to get the clarity of what we're saying. It is very orderly and masuda, but you just have to know the Seder. Well, you have to be alert to the Seder. Okay. Ubir ha'inyan. So to understand this inyan, that Malchus is now the means by which the Eir can be Niskala, not the way that the Eir can be Nis'alim. Yuvan aderech moshel bashbos Rav the Talmud. It's going to be understood by way of example of how a Rav communicates and shares ideas with a student. Sheyesh bezeh beis oifani hashbois. There's two, broadly speaking, two ways in which this can occur. Shein beis minutes and sumim, which reflects two types of symptom, two types of contractions, two types of restrictions on the Seichel Harav. Ha'alef, the first type, is when we're talking about Kashat Talmid Kotten, when the Rav is teaching a minor student, a student of minor abilities. So Mukhrich Harav Lahali Mimenu Legamni Kol Amkus Chachmasi. The Rav is required to conceal entirely all of the depths of his own wisdom. And only reveals a minimal amount. Like by way of example, when you learn with a small child, the teacher is required to withhold the profundity of the ideas that are being communicated, to the point where the child should not be aware of them at all, because the child is not in a state where he's going to be able to comprehend and grasp the ideas as they are in their fullest profundity. It will confuse the child and mix him up, make him confused. You only reveal to the child that which is within his abilities, which relative to the teacher is going to be an extremely reduced and restricted amount of seichel in comparison to what is the full concept. And we're going to call that, this is going to be described as a tzimtzum gomer, an absolute tzimtzum. The whole thing is being completely withheld. All that's being revealed is that which is graspable by the child, which is like an efes katzei of the seichel, the entire seichel. If you think language, the profundity of language, and you're teaching a child aleph beis, you're not even explaining to them any of the profundity of the aleph beis. Nothing from the Sefer Yetzirah, nothing from the Sifrei Dikduk, just poshut, a letter, aleph. Efes katzei, compared to what an aleph contains, what a base contains, the child is getting an aleph and base. And if you were to start trying to communicate to the aleph based child the depth and the profundity of language, like it's explained in Ranat, you're going to start explaining to them the meaning of dibur, dibur, then the kid's not going to learn aleph base. They're going to get completely overwhelmed. But yesh b'zeh oidofen. Even within this oifen, it's not a separate. It's not this. This is not oifen abes. Yesh b'zeh oidofen within the oifen aleph. She'ena megala le'iraka oisius levad u'malim kola eilagamri. That you don't even attempt to communicate to the child any sort of conceptual idea for them to understand. You're just going to the oisius. They learn Tanya Balpeh, Mishnayos Balpeh. Not shaykh to learn. You don't explain to them Tanya. It's a child. Oisius Bilvad. She's mamish Helen Behester. There's no seichel at all. The Eir has seichel is completely the Helen. You're not going to confuse the child. Before a kid can start learning Mishnayos Balpeh, can start learning Chumash Balpeh, can start learning Tilim Balpeh, can start learning Tanya Balpeh, they have to push to understand everything. The Dikduk and the Oimek and everything. No. So it's such a musa when you're teaching a Yeled Cotton, there has to be a Tzimtzum Gomur mitzad derav. Obviously, this in itself is relative. There's degrees, right? But overall, what is niskala to the child is an efes katzeu, and only that which is lefi erech the child, and it's an efes katzeu compared to the entire amkus achachma, which the Rav is aware of. Yeah. Omnam gam kishamegala le'eir seichel. Even in the instance when you do communicate some degree of seichel, so not just the oisius. So the first oifen, not like the oid oifen. What we were saying till before we got to the oid oifen. You are communicating something. Einay megala li'rak oir muat. The little that you are giving them is even that is going to be constricted and constrained, because it's not going to be the way that idea is appreciated and understood by the teacher. To teach, the ikka inyan of teaching is what? That in this instance, the child should understand. What can the child understand? The child can't understand the way I understand things, the way the teacher understands things. So you have to communicate in the way that they can understand it. So lefi erech, so even when you are communicating ideas, but to a child that idea is efes katzeu, it's infinitesimally incomparable to the quality of the idea as it's appreciated by the teacher. Yeah? That is one oifen of hashpos harav letalmid.
And the Ishbasat what is that adding?
You can even communicate to a child with absolutely zero seichel. Zero eira seichel.
So
it's just the isius.
How does that work? So what do you say?
You're teaching the child to learn Teirut Tivol on the Meisha Menashe Kilas Yankiv. Chazring the isius.
Fine.
Because you're maskul tinik ledaber, you're supposed to teach them how to say Teirut Tivol on the Meisha Menashe Kilas Yankiv. You're not telling them what the Teirut is. You're not telling them who Moshe Rabbeinu is. You're not even telling them who Kilas Yankiv is.
So before you...
They don't know the halach in Shulchan Aruch.
So before you might not have been telling them Torah, possibly you'd be telling them what the Torah is, maybe, or something like
Nothing.
that. No, before...
say after me, Torah. Say after me, Tziva. That's it. But Yesh was out even. She'ena megalali rak ha'isius levad.
And before
when
that,
a child learns...
Before that, what were you doing?
Before that's nothing. I mean, that's Kamaskul Tin Gladaber, there's no teaching. That is the first act of teaching, right? So you teach them Torah Civil Animation Menashe Yankiv. So it's Shaisius Bulbad. The kid doesn't know what Torah is, doesn't know what Moshe Rabbeinu is, doesn't know what a Kilas Yankiv is.
I think
or Yerusha.
The original explanation.
Yeah, he's just saying it can even be a point where there's no seichel. But even when there is a Eira seichel, so he wants to be able to say, on the one hand, we're saying it's a tzimtzum gomor, but there is a shikol Eira. There is a gilu, a katsas. But that gilu is mamish efes kotseim. And it's shleila fi erech, the way that even that thing is understood in the mashpia. So it's like a shinui. It's been the shtana legamri to be lefi erech the kliya makabel.
And what is this bit that he is getting?
So okay, Teirut Zivalanu Meisha. There was a Moshe Rabbeinu. The Moshe Rabbeinu was thousands of years ago received the Torah in Har Sinai. So it's a shikol eira seichel, right? Who was Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was, he started teaching a child. But the teacher's musig of Moshe Rabbeinu is shleila fi erech. When you say Moshe received the Torah to the child, that means one thing, and by the teacher it's a completely different thing. It's incomparable. So even when it's efes kotzeyu, there's a shikol eras. There is still an eras eichel. It's not shleila fi erech. That's Eifna Aleph. So it's just an example of a method of Hashpos Harav L'Talmud. We're going to in the Nimshal, we're going to explain how this reflects the way Malchus is mashpia into Eilam Biyah. That's going to be one model. But Eifna Beisu, a second manner in which a teacher can teach a student is Geshalaymed in Talmud Gadol. You're learning with Talmud Gadol. You're learning with a Talmud who can be described as a Gadol, meaning that he has good abilities. He's a Kli Kibbul. He's able to understand things. But you're still the Rav, and he's still the Talmud. So you have the Seichel. But this is such a Talmud who is a Kli to be a Makabel that Seichel that you have. So you're Megalatim everything. Kol Eira Seichel. Bagam Oimek HaSeichel. Everything that you have, you communicate to him. Umikol Makim. But at the same time, even though you're giving him everything, there still needs to be an act of tzimtzum of some sort. What is the manner of tzimtzum which the Rav has to employ in order to communicate with his prize student? That in the act of teaching, the shir should not be in a manner of ispashus v'israchavus immediately. You don't throw the whole thing out at the student in one big lump. You don't just give him the profundity of the idea as it's appreciated by the teacher straight away. That's not a manner. It's not a method of teaching. It's not a good pedagogical style. First of all, you set out, generally, broadly speaking, the muslig that you're communicating, which in truth encompasses everything that you're going to say. But it's said bekitza, but all the inyonim are still being spoken about in a much broad and overarching sense, rather than in specifics. And this is not comparable to the teaching a child. Because with the child, you're not giving him the whole seichel. You're only giving a little bit. And even the little bit you're giving is the most infinitesimal amount of it. But when you're teaching over here to the prize students, the entire thing is there. But at the outset, you communicate in brief and broad terms. Then afterwards, you give bit by bit, gradually breaking it apart, explaining everything. And in an orderly fashion, you communicate to him the entirety of the idea that you're trying to share. And once he has all of the details, then it's appropriate to talk about the profundity of the idea, the depth of the idea. So, for the purpose of teaching in this way is that the entirety of the idea, in its oimech, eirich, and reichev, if you remember from the first Maimah, we talked about oimech, eirich, and reichev of a musag, the different aspects of a devar seichel. It has its oimech, its eirich, and reichev. You remember, look back in Rosh Hashanah to remember. They get the whole thing. At the end, he has the whole package. But it's coming in a Masudadika fashion. It's not all in one. It's not all in one go. There's a seder. You're a teacher. Teaching hashba has to be Masuda. Otherwise, the hashba doesn't go to the right place. See, even when you're being mashpia everything, aber mit der seder. So the tzimtzum of the mashpia, the tzimtzum of the Rav, in this oifen, is not a tzimtzum, but they're helem. It's just a tzimtzum in order that it should go to lamokim haroi. It should be just channeled in the right way. But the entire seichel is communicated. There's no helem.
Like Mishnayos.
No. The Mishnah is a good example. The Mishnah is an example of the stage one of the example. But the teacher teaches it in an oifen of Mishnayos, which is b'derech klal of a kitzah. And then he teaches it in an oifen of Gemara, which is ba'oirech v'reichev. And then he teaches al pichsidus and even the oimek. So at the beginning, the teacher wants to communicate, because he's a Talmud Gadol, he can teach him everything. But if he starts teaching him everything in a bilti seder, he's having a toisvus and he hasn't even taught in the Mishnah. No, there's a seder. Limud comes with a seder. In order to acquire muskolis, to appreciate ideas, there's a method of learning. There's a method of learning, there's a method of teaching. So your example of the Mishnah is the derech katsara, how he starts off. He doesn't stop there. He gives him the whole eirich, eirich, and eimek. He just does it in order. It's a Masudadika teacher. But there's no, the whole package is given over. The nimtza. So what do we find from this? The betzimtzum there, in this manner of tzimtzum, we're still calling it tzimtzum. But it's a completely different notion of tzimtzum. The tzimtzum is that the whole thing is not offloaded onto the student in one go. It's just that it's done in an orderly fashion. So there isn't any concealment of the idea at all. The whole thing gets communicated. The tzimtzum is that it's done in a fashion that it can be niskabel in a pnimius by the makabel. And then the makabel afterwards can do what he likes with it. He can take it away and abstract it out from all of the examples that were given, the mashalim and all the explanations that the teacher gave, to get back to the nekudas haseichel. and can get to the same level of hafshata and subtlety in the idea that the teacher has. So the whole thing has been, in a sense, replicated in the Makabel, but there has been a function of Tzimtzum. So those are the two examples of the way a Rav can mashpia into a Talmud. Yeah?
Yeah.
So now, the goal today, if we're going to have enough time, Be'ezus Hashem, is to do the first oifen. So the oifen harishain.
Right.
No.
Oifen a base.
No.
Oh.
The next paragraph is the oifen habase. Omnam oifen habase. This oifen habase is the oifen habase within the.
Right.
So.
And this is the whole thing you told us about the other day. Marshal b'tich, marshal b'tich, marshal.
No, that's the next. That will be the next. That'll be the next. So don't worry. If you listen to me, you'll be fine. Don't worry. Nothing to worry about. So the goal is to do the Oifen Harishin. So the Oifen Harishin in Ashbos Harav the Talmud is where you're talking to a Yeled Cotton. You're teaching a Yeled Cotton, right? So now we're going to see that what does it mean when Malchus is the Gilui from Malchus, the way Malchus is mashpia into Biyah, can be compared to the way the Rav is mashpia to a Yeled Cotton, which is where there's a complete Tzimtzum, which is the way that we learned in Midas Adin, right? And the way we learned in Lulavarov and in V'yei Mashmani Ataris. So it's now going to spell that out and how that will reflect. But we'll be fine. Ba'adogmi is even being nashbo v'gilui shal yidei is the malchus. Sheyesh bezeh beis eifanim. Yep.
Yeah.
Ha'aleph, this is the aleph. So this is our first one, and this aleph.
So it's in the footnote that pei hey it has a second.
Right, and that's important. No, don't get confused. The pei dalid is not the ifan base. The ifan base is on the pei hey.
What the omnam? The omnam.
Yeah.
Fine.
Ha'alephu. Kisha ike ha'oir da'atzilus v'atzmi usay. Eine meir klal al-yidei ha'oisius de malchus ki im rak oir muat levad. Okay, that's the Oifen Harishin. Where the oir of Atzilus, which is the dugmas, the oir haseichel of the Rav, is not meir at all through the oisius de malchus, and all that is communicated is in muat levad, just like in the mashal of the Rav and the Talmud. Yeah?
Yeah.
The Yesh Leimar. So what's the Yesh Leimar here? It's coming to explain exactly what is conveyed by Malchus of Atzilus to the Nivroim of Biyah. The Hainu. Masha rak chitzoinius hakelim da Atzilus naasim neran lebiyah. So these are Oisius. It's itself going to quote the Igeres HaKodesh, and you'll be familiar with that the Kalim of Malchus, the Atzilus, produced the Naran of Biyah, the Neshama of Nefesh Ruach Neshama of Biyah. So let it breathe. It will breathe this out. This statement, what it's trying to say now. When we talk about the chitzonius of a kli, you could say it's the chitzonius of the pnimius. So it's so it's just the outside of something which is you could think of the notion of chitzonius as the chitzonius of the pnimius. So it's just a part of the pnimius. It's the pnimius as it is in a state of chitzonius. Saying no.
No. What?
Klolos inyan bechinas chitzonius akli, ein zeh bechinas atmus u'masakli. When we talk about the chitzonius of the kli, it's not just a part of the kli which is in a state of chitzonius. What is the state of a chitzonius? The chitzonius of a zach. I think we discussed this way back in the earlier shiurim. The chitzonius of the thing is the way that thing is very good, very well remembered. Is nisgala and is b'shaychus to a zulas, to the other thing. That is the chitzonius of a thing. An inyan atzmi. What is an atzmi? An atzmi is comfortable in itself, doesn't need something else. That is the whole notion of an atzmi. The atzmius of a thing is the way the thing is for itself. The chitzonius of it is its gilui. The way it is b'shaychus to a zulas, to another thing.
Isn't a kli also a gilui?
Well, you could say within, this is relative, within that thing, within what we call kelim. And kelim is also madrigas. The atzmius of a keli is itself, it's just for itself. It's not b'shay, it's not in a tnua.
The whole point of kli for O to be inside it. So therefore it is also...
That's not, no. Why? Maybe the whole thing of a kli is to be bottled. That's the notion of kelim. Bittul.
To what?
To what? It's a fundamental state of bittul. Doesn't do anything. Keli, makabel. All the things we talk about makabel. Guf is a kli. Isha is a kli.
No.
Okay, but it's not. It doesn't.
It's not makabel, eh?
It's not. It's not in a tnua of it. It's not in. As we said, the lashon in Chinam Yomayim. It's not. Bechinas pu'ula lifol. Loi begeda pu'ula lifol. I think was the lashon.
Okay.
In Chinam Yomayim. Loi begeda pu'ula lifol. It's not in a tenua of gilui, of shaykhus to anything else. No. Adarab, the mashpia is constantly wanting me is biskalas. Helam is not. Something which is behelam is doimim. It's inanimate, it's inactive. So chitzonius, is trying to emphasize over here when we say the chitzonius of the kelim of Atzilus, it's not just like, oh, you got Atzilus, you got the Pnimius, and you got the Chitzonius, and the Chitzonius is just the Gilui of the Pnimius. No. As he says. Klolos inye beginnes Chitzonius akli, ein ze beginnes Atzmus umas akli. The beginnes Pnimius akli, zehu beginnes Atzmus mehusa. Mashe hi kli le Kabbalah. Aber Chitzonius akli, ein ze me'etzem mehusa. Ki imrak lahashpia el azulas chuli. So what is the atmos of the kli? To be a makabel. The chitzonius of the kli is to be mashpia lezulas. So when we say that it's what was the statement we made? Masherak chitzonius hakelim da atzilus nasim naran lebiyah. Yeah? This is HaKabbalah. This is Eis Chaim. The chitzonius of the kli is what is niskala to biyah, and the chitzonius hakli is not the pnimius of the kli. It's not the same. It's not of the same order. Aber chitzonius hakli ein ze me'etzem mehusa ki im rak lashpia lazulas. V'zo bechinas klolos ha'oir ba'gilu shenimshach me'atzilus liyah. So when we're talking about the klolos ha'oir, what is niskala from atzilus to biyah? It's the chitzonius hakli. Aber bechinas pnimius va'atzmius ha'oir da'atzilus. Gam bechinas atzmius hakelim, not just even the atzmius hakelim, ein hemshekh lebiyah. So back to our moshel, or the hashpol Rav leTalmid. The Rav is not mashpia oimek sichloi. He's not. The whole klolos haseichel is mamish adov chitzoni. Is be'ein areich legavi the pnimius haseichel of the Rav. Similarly, the hashpah from atzilus to biyah is in a comparable fashion, whereby the eir, which is niskala, is a eir chitzoni, an eir mu b'dabad. Ube'emes bechinas hagilu b'biyah u'bechinas hakelim the malchus. We're talking now kelim in the lashon of the Eis Chaim. Mashe chitzoni is hakelim datzilus. It's like the chitzoni hakelim all the ganze, even chochmah datzilus. The emes is, where does the gilu come from? Not from the chochmah datzilus. The gilu comes from the kelim of malchus datzilus. So it's even more mitzumtzum. Kamesha kosa begeres hakedesh dibra maschil hiu v'chayu ichad simchav. The mechitzonis hakelim, the yutzfiris, the atzilus, nivru haicholis, the atzilus. That what you get from the chitzonis hakelim of atzilus, they get the haicholis of atzilus. They're not biyah. Ube biyah, bechinas halamed kein the malchus the atzilus nasin the ran lebiyah. In the Geras HaKodesh, it clarifies and differentiates of what is affected by the kelim of atzilus. The kelim of atzilus, other than malchus, create the haicholis in atzilus. But the chitzonis hakelim of malchus atzilus, that's what makes them the ran lebiyah. Fu bechinas neshama debiyah, shem is a nivru bechinas hakelim debiyah, shehem bechinas yesh. And from there you got the whole Seder Shtalshlus. From the Neshama Debiyah, you get the Kelim Debiyah. So you come from the Eir Debiyah to the Kelim Debiyah, until you and me. Kol HaNivroim Debiyah.
So what the Lamed again? The Lamed Kelim? How they made up again? Nefshach Neshama of the Yitzfiris of the Chtzenius. So that makes 30.
Nimtza. The Masha Nimshach mi Atzilus Lebiyah hu bechinas hakelim the Malchus Atzilus. Ad sheba Asiya Meir rak bechinas chitzonis hakelim the Malchus Atzilus. K'mesha Kosav Shom begeres hakedesh anal with their maskulov imach Kosav Priyas Chaim Kosav chitzonis the chitzonis the kelim hakelim the Malchus. Says there's the kelim. So it's madgish even more in the Kunshas Achrin, that not only is it the chitzonis hakelim, it's the chitzonis the kelim. It's mamish ein muat, ein matzumsum b'yisa. But this is nothing new for us, right? This is exactly what we said in Lulav Ravim v'yimash miyatzeres. The relationship between Atzilus and Biyah. We explained at length, right? Difference between Atzilus, difference between Biyah. We explained Atzilus and the Ma'achtus, and we said in Biyah, how is the difference? Because of the Malchus, because the Eisis Hadibur of Malchus, Eisis Hadibur is Chalkus, they're able to be Malim Master. We explained the Barichas, the union of Dibur, as it's Malim Master on the Eir, in order that they can, the Moshel is that in order to communicate the Seichel, is a Helen Behest Legamri. And this is we're spelling out in sort of comparable areas, but this is it's a chazara of the oifen of hashpah from Atzilus to Biyah, the way we described it in Lulav Arov and Yimash Atzeres. Yes or no? You right? Yeah.
We said all over here that the Chatzenius Kelim, the Malchus Atzilus go to Shirish Biyah, yeah. Then we just said in the Nimsa that we said Nimsa the Mash Nimsa Metzil Biyah B'Chanas HaKelim the Malchus Atzilus. And it doesn't say Chatzenius Kelim. And what is Chatzenius Kelim? Rak B'Chanas Chatzenius. Ad Shebasiya Mei Rak B'Chanas Chatzenius Kelim the Malchus. So it's saying in.
No, I don't think that's the deal. The whole point is because the Chatzenius the Chatzenius. The is the Chatzenius. It's not. I don't think it's a.
Bit of odd lotion.
I see what you're saying, but I don't think it's an issue to pick up.
What is it saying then? Otherwise?
What do you mean what's it saying? It's saying what it's saying.
So why did it? What was the first said that?
It's saying that in Olam HaBriya, in Reishis Habiyah,
right.
Then the Gilui from Malchus to the Atzilus in Biyah is going to be stronger and more intense than it's going to be in Asiyah. It's just trying to point out how ultimately if Olam Hazeh, the Nivroim of Asiyah, if we are the Yelet Cotton, there has to be a Tzimtzum Otzum in order to facilitate our education, our hashpah. Now Malchus whole idea is it's a makabel, right? And it's makabel from the Eir Shel Ma'ila Mimena. And that is, the whole function, the whole way that the Seder Shalshus works is that Malchus has to be makabel from the Spheres Elyonis, the Tet Spheres Elyonis, and then it's capable of creating. So you would think that's an increase in Eir. But even though there is a hemshekh from the Tesfiras in Malchus, they come in an open of Islapshus, like we've explained again by Arichus. In those Osius, in the kingdom of Malchus, it causes a hell and behester on that road. And besides for that, the O which is nimshach from the Tesfiras Elyonis is an Eimru Bilvad. Kaved Malchus Chimeru Ugvura Sechayid Abeir. The Gavur is the Zah on Mailim Master also Matamtim the O. The Ainu Masha Shaykh El Azulas Levad is only the O which is Shaykh El Azulas. Lo Bechinas Atmos O. Which we said Atmos of a thing is the way the thing is in itself. The Gil to Azulas is going to be the Chitzenius of the thing. So side beside the hemshekh which comes from the Tesfiras of Yenis is going to be an Muat Bulba, is itself already going to be an Omer Tzumtzum. And then Vaita in Malchus is going to be more of a Tzimtzum through the Hannah Hester of the Osius at Dibur of Malchus, in the Kalim of Malchus, and that is what's Nimshach in Biyah, which is an Omer Bulbad.
Did you see that what is Nimshach in Malchus is the Kalim of Atzilus?
Yes.
Not the of Atzilus.
Right, that's the Tzimtzum.
Did you see that the that goes to Malchus? Isn't the is the Kalim? Even then, it's changed the Kalim.
When do we say that?
The beginning of the paragraph. Beginning ish.
No, we didn't.
The Hanomash that seems that Kalim that Silus Nasim and the Biyah.
The Biyah.
That goes through Malchus. The change of the Kalim of Atzilus.
No, then that is a quote from the Eitz Chaim. We then clarified and we said the Chitzenius Akelim of Atzilus, they make the Eicholis and Atzilus, and it's the Chitzenius Akelim of Malchus which make the Neshama for Biyah.
The Chitzenius of Malchus. Where's Malchus from? That's where it's above it.
Well, it's not from them, but it's Makabel.
Where's it compiled from?
It's Makabel from them, yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't receive the from them, does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, how do you receive the O from the Resilience? Through the Kalim. Because the Kalim are the manner by which the Neskala, the Kalim and the Chitzenius are the way it's communicated and shared. So, but it's not the O.
Since according to Ranat, the O is an establishing the Kalim. According to Ranat.
What do you mean, according to Ranat? According to
the Ranat explains the O.
Which O?
The O that goes into the Kalim.
Yeah.
It says it's an establishing Kalim. Like a goof.
Okay.
And since Habasha means that it changes according to the.
Okay.
So does that mean that since the same way the O which goes to the Malchus is an establishing Malchus, so it becomes like Malchus and therefore it's really a bigger miyot. So to the O which goes into the Kalim should also become like Kalim and a bigger miyot.
From the Spirit of Yunus.
Yeah.
Yeah. To an extent. But the Kalim, those Kalim are not as extreme
As Malchus.
As Malchus.
The O which Malchus receives is really Kalim.
Stop,
what is Kalim? It's the O through Kalim.
Okay.
It's not just the O.
It's the O that Shaykh
Okay,
Azulas.
fine.
What is Shaykh Azulas? Chitzenius.
The Chitzenius O.
And Kalim
It's managed through the Kalim. I'm saying it's like, well, I don't know I'm not sure what you're gaining from that. You're saying it's even more mitzvah.
No, what you gain is that it's Chitzenius Kalim, not the Chitzenius of the O, because that really is the same thing.
Are they the same thing?
I think we've done. I think we're good enough here. Okay. Vaha Inyan. We're now going to elaborate a little bit on this point of the hashpah from the Sfiras Elyonos into Malchus, how that comes about and what that's like. So this is a subsection within this section. So for Inyan in a Inyan ha'aretz zah shemei b'malchus l'seirich is havas ha'ilamos yesh leima al beis oifanim. So now we have another two oifanim, but these are the two oifanim which are a subclause within this first oifan. Right? Okay? Ha-rishon. So the first is as follows. Al-pi ma she'noida she'bechinas malchus netzla b'soid sheirish rak nekuda achas levad. So again, from the Eitz Chaim.
Obviously.
Malchus, the formation of Malchus, the Atzilus of Malchus, is as an Akuda Achas Levad. Ubin Akuda, over the page, Akuda Zu Yesh Beis Deis. In that alone there is 2 days. What exactly is this Nakuda? Imhu Bechinas Kesa Malchus, the Nakuda aspect of it, the way it is at least, originally formed, is that the Kesa Malchus or Bechinas Malchus of Malchus? So is it sort of a pnimius of Malchus, which is then developed and expanded so that Malchus develops its full array of identity and abilities, or is it the Darga Nemucha, the lower Darga, the Malchus Sheba Malchus, and from there it's built up? Is it sort of, do you have something which is an Akuda, which itself expands and because it's an Akuda is in the sense of like sort of the kernel, the core, the essence of Malchus? Is the Nakuda the essence of Malchus, or is this Nakuda the lowest aspect of Malchus?
Where's the Nakuda coming from, Kasa?
No, in the Atzilus of, so in the Sahavas of Olam HaAtzilus, every other Eir, every other Sphira has its own partsuf,
Identity.
has a full, a fully
Picture.
developed notion of what it is. Whereas Malchus doesn't. Malchus is created as just a Nakuda. There is a machlekes what that Nakuda is. Does Nakuda indicate a core, like it be, so that would be like its Keser, its Pnimius, or its Nakuda is something, it's of sort of the end point of Malchus. Malchus to Malchus. Fine, it doesn't matter. What we're talking about doesn't matter. Both opinions, they all agree that it was a Nakuda Achas. In order Malchus can be built up into a fully composed entity made up of the 10 components of Esespheres. Because each Sphira has its own Esespheres. Chachma de Chachma, Bina de Chachma, yeah? Each Sphira is made up of 10. Only once it has a full compound of idea or of components, then there can be a yichud of Zon Malchus. Even as Atela, that you have to build it out of the rib. There has to be a building. This is what's indicated there in the psukim about Chava. So al yidei shemakabelas mikol ha'esespheres shebechinas Malchus shebechachma. The dezar over there is a little bit confusing, and if you look in the footnote, he also indicates that it's a bit confusing. So we're just going to read it without it for the moment. Shebechinas Malchus shebechachma nasa chachma shebemalchus. Okay, so what does Malchus receive? Malchus receives from Malchus shebechachma and Malchus shebebina, and Malchus, each one of those is mashpia into Malchus, and then you have a parts of shalim. Malchus to bina nasa bina shebemalchus. Chem b'chol hamidus chuli. V'zeu letzerich binyana atzma. V'zeu sheirish in test tkiyos. V'test brachis to Rosh Hashanah. Sheheim b'chdei lasis binyan malchus liyos b'bechinas parts of shalim. Okay, so that's also why we have the 9 tkiyos and the 9 brachas, indicating the hamshacha from the 9 spheres into malchus to make the binyan malchus. Va'oz, what happens then? Kashanasa b'bechinas parts of once it's a partsuf, it can then create Eilam Espiyah. The Esespheres the Malchus, Nasa Esespheres the Biyah. Like we said in the previous paragraph. Hainu Bechinas Eira Neshama the Biyah. V'zom Bechinas Lamed came the Esespheres the Malchus, Shenim Shachim the Biyah, Chuli Kanal. The Bechinas Eira Neshama Hanal, Nishavu HaKelim, V'gam HaEiris Nefesh Ruach the Biyah. Mizivuk Zun de Biyah, Nisavu Kol HaNivroim de Biyah, Al Yidei Neshama Shebehem, K'mishkos V'geres HaKedesh, Hanal. Okay, so the kitzur, what happens? you have Malchus. Originally as a Nakuda Achas Bulvad. Then you have a hemshekh in Malchus from the essence to Tesvirus Elyonis. From the Bechinas Malchus Shebohem. Malchus Sheba Chochmah. Malchus Sheba Bina. And then you have a parts of Shalom of Malchus. You have Malchus, you have Chochmah Sheba Malchus, and you have Bina Sheba Malchus, and you have Dash Sheba Malchus. Yeah. And with that parts of Shalom, you can have the Yichud Zoh Malchus, which allows for the Binyan Oilamis, creation of the worlds, which itself is a process. You have the Neshama, and it comes from the Kelim, and even then, from Malchus itself, the Malchus which you've just built up, is from the Chitzoni, it's HaKelim of Malchus, that's Atzilus, that you can have the Neshama Biyah, and from the Neshama Biyah, you can have the Esesphiris of Biyah, and from the Esesphiris of Biyah, you can have the Kelim of Biyah, and then weiter. Or the whole process of Ishtashnus. V'hinei. B'chin as ha'aretz hazah shemei b'malchus tzirich binyana. So this ha'aretz of Zah.
Where are we? Didn't we skip? No?
No, I just read it very quickly. V'hinei. It's halfway through the paragraph,
Yeah.
last word on the line.
Okay.
V'hinei. V'hinei b'chin as ha'aretz hazah shemei b'malchus tzirich binyana. Which is what we remember, this is the beginning of the paragraph. It tells you what's the purpose of this paragraph. We said at the beginning, Inyan ha'aretz zah shemei b'malchus tzirich havas eilamis. What is this Inyan? What is this ha'ara of zah in Malchus in order for it to create the what? So it's now saying that. V'hinei b'chinas ha'aretz zah shemei b'malchus tzirich binyana. So b'chinas ha'ara chitzonis levad b'chinas zah. We're talking about ha'ara chitzonis. We're talking about the Malchus of Chesed. We're not, and it's not, it's like mamash the dagar nemucha. Shari ha'arazu he ubechinas hamalchus shebechol tzvir v'chol bechinas malchus ubechinas chitzenis. Because what is the whole point of malchus? The seir chazulas. Malchus is dibud the seir chazulas. So in that sphere itself, it is the dagar nemucha because it's the seir chazulas. It's not the seir chatzma. It's not in atzmi. It's the inyan chitzeni. Which calls Beis Chaim shaprate the ibu yinika and what is it? Ibu yinika and meichin per gimel. The bechinas hamalchus shebechol tzvira. Ubechinas hagilui shaba, kemishkos l'ktetir the maskul levayin in amasois perik base. V'chol gilui ubechinas ha'archit seinius shalabami atzmosichuli. Which again, back to what we originally when we talked at length about the difference between an atzmi and a gilui. Ubemokum achem mavua. Okay, good. So we're good, yeah. Okay. We haven't. We're just emphasizing what we said in the previous paragraph that. Malchus, it's a ha'arach chitzonis from Malchus, which is nimshach into biyah, and even we sort of pointed out that even though Atzilus is Malchus Atzilus is makabel from the Tesvirus Elyonis, what is makabel from the Tesvirus Elyonis is ha'arach chitzonis itself. So this is elaborating on what that ha'arach chitzonis is. It's not really that much more hasbara. It's just more asius.
Okay.
Yeah. It's being mayrich the inyan without necessarily adding much more in the context of this inyan in Kabbalah, and it's spelling it out. So it's spelling it out as a structure, but it's not. But we've already had the biur, the hasbara shebadov, about how a gilui shebadov, the malchus of a thing is the gilui, and the gilui is the chitzonius, that we should have already have built up from the earlier Maimorim, which you do, Baruch Hashem. U'makom achem mavua. The bechinas hamalchus shebechol sfira. So bechinas ha'oisiyah shebechol sfira. So some places it says, what is the malchus of every sphere? It's the gilui of every sphere, which is the inyan cheseni. Other places it talks about how the malchus of each sphere is the oisiyus of that sphere. The oisiyus who lashon asa v'gilui. It's not a separate pshat. It's the same pshat because oisiyus is also the inyan of gilui.
Also means come.
Yeah.
Comes like
arriving and bringing.
Megala.
Yeah. Who inyan bechinas hakelim. There's a call inyan hakelim. Shu bechinas hiskalas ha'oyre v'spashtusay. The commercial calls Beis Chaim. The inyan is pashtus meira. His avos yisem ikmei. In order for something being nispashit, the thing itself has to be more substantive. It's avos ha'oyre so inyan hakli. So that we're using different oisias here. You can call it oisias. You can call it malchus. You can call it gilui. But we're talking about an oir metzumtzum, and we're not talking about when you think that there's binyan malchus, there's all of a sudden a grace of gilui oir. There's no grace Gilui. The A which is nimshach into Malchus is Na'ir Metzumzum B'Yesa. I mashkos b'es chaim shasi da bi apirik based v'shon mash med hainu b'chinas ispashus ein seif mekein hu ba'eid ispashus galas eid zo in nakli kamish kos mak mach mit maschel es bi machuli ba bi da mag mit achris. Okay. Not nage. Me b'china zu nivna ha malchus bi b'chinas parts of is mokelis avos de bia. So from this b'china, this ha'arich itzonius of za, you build up malchus to be a part of. There can be a mokelis avos de bia. But what are you? It's ha'arich itzonius. So it's been madgish how much more that this is the nimshal of our hashpos harav letalmid. Yeah. Just emphasizing. Yeah, it's not like there's not a new beer. It's not saying anything new. He's emphasizing, but he's going to give a bit more subtlety. This is the first oifen, and that fits in very nicely with what we said till now. But there's no oifen habase to the way Zor is nimshach into Malchus. And again, it's not going to put us off track. It's not like by doing this, it's not like a question and answer situation. It's just further hasbara and spreading and bringing out the inyan. Okay, we can do this. Let's do it. Oifen habase. But oifen habase yesh leimar ba'oimek yesa. So there's a second manner in which Zah is nimshach into Malchus. Not just l'tzirich binyana, because Malchus is created as a nekuda achas and tzirich binyana in order to be a part of Shalom. It has to have hemshekh from Zah, and but that hemshekh from Zah is the chitzenius of Zah, it's the Malchus of each sfira, it's the gilui of each sfira, it's the oisius of each sfira. We're not talking here about stage one. Stage one, you have to have binyan malchus. Before you get anything to talk about, there has to be a malchus to talk about. Malchus lechatchil is a nekuda achas bilvad. So you have to have hemshekh from the spheres of Yenus, which is nimshach into malchus. I take it hard, everything. But then what? What happens afterwards? Afterwards, there has to be a yichud of Zon Malchus. Once you have a fully functioning Malchus as a part of Bifnei Atzmei, yichud zon. Then you have a new Gilui. Not the Gilui from before, not the Ha'ara of the Malchus of each Sfira, which enabled Malchus to be a part of Shalim. Now we're talking about a new Gilui through the yichud of Zah and Malchus. But don't think, therefore, there's this that Malchus is this shining of Eira Atzilus to the point where what is nimshach to biyah is what can be described as a gilui of Atzilus. No, Malchus is still completely mailim umaste on the Eira of Atzilus. Even in the case of Yichud Zah and Malchus, the Ha'ara from Zah to Malchus is also Ha'ara Chitzenis. Because the very notion, this whole idea that we say that the Midas of Atzilus, Zah of Atzilus, they are the Sheirish Ha'elamis, they are the Makir Ha'elamis. Right? The Bar Mitzvah Maimas, that we associate all these middays of Rachamim, Chasadim, and everything with Olam, that they are the Makir Olamis. Yeah? We also say Sheish Shamim, yeah?
Barashis.
Yeah, Barashis. Barashis Baragim, Barashis, yeah.
I'm finding it some less than Barashis, I would think.
Fundamentally, the midas are shayachim el azulas, right? That's what we always say. And we always emphasize, what is it? Moichin is la'atzmei, whereas midas is lazulas. So, that you would think is the pnimius of the midas, right? So what are you telling me? Yichud Zah and Malchus. Zah is fully signed up to the idea of azulas, just like Malchus is. He wants to be mashbil azulas, he wants to create olamis. That's the whole identity of Zah, right? No. Everything that we say about Zah being no, That is not what it's all about. That's Heingurak Pa'ulas Hamidis. When we're talking about that, we're only referring to the Pa'ulas Hamidis. The Etzem Hamidis, Hari Shayachim Gambali Zulas, because you can have Midis even without a Zulas. Raksha Pa'ulas Hamidis Yefshabli Zulas. You can't be kind to someone without there being someone to be kind to. But you can be a kind person without some Zulas. Dibur, in contrast, you can't have without the Zulas. Malchus is entirely the Bishvil Zulas.
Dibur, you can't have that Zulas.
No. Ikke inyan adibur is Bishvil Zulas.
Bishvil Zulas. The same midis are for Zulas. But you can be kind. Even if you're not being kind to somebody. Be a kind person.
You can be a kind person.
Who speak even though speaking to someone.
Kol inyan hamidis is not Bishvil Zulas.
It's not.
No. Kol inyan adibur is Bishvil Zulas. Colossian Lulav Arava. Why am I not finding it? Kol inyan, yeah, Bishvil Zulas. So calling in adibul tzedek zolasi davka amid ben zayin. He says it's very, very stark here.
So it's full. But you can still speak without somebody being there.
For sure you can still speak. But the very fact that a person has the koyach adibur is bishvil azulas. Etzem hakoyach. Etzem koyach adibur is in order. The person, there is the reason a person has midlis is not necessarily bishvil azulas.
Why get midis then?
Why would a person have midlis?
It's not for the Zulas. What would?
The function, you got to understand, like the middays are able, you can be ma'ira a middah, and you can taka have that middah. It can be real. It's not like you can taka speak to yourself, but it's not a function of dibba. It's not, you can't say that dibba. There'll be no reason to learn a language unless you have someone to speak to.
You could understand what your machshava better, surely, no?
You want a machshava. What would you be thinking about? You're thinking in language, right?
Oh.
But dibur is bishvil azulas.
Scrap that.
Dibur is bishvil azulas, whereas middas are not.
Right.
The pa'ula of a middah, for sure. I mean, you could say that everything is in order. An inyan doesn't reach its shleimus unless it also has its pa'ula as well. So the middah is not shalem. Avraham Avinu was mitzvah that he wasn't able to have achnos zerchim. His middas achesed was caused it pain because he wasn't able to be mashlim it b'poyel. But he had the middas achesed. It didn't, not being able to be poyel the pa'ulas achesed did not undermine or did not interfere with him being an Isha Chesed. Didn't diminish the fact that he was an Isha Chesed. For sure that the midah in its shleimus is realized when it's niskayim b'poyel. But kol pa'ula, but the midah is an inyan pnimi. Okay, this is all lefi erech dibu, lefi erech seichel meichen. For sure, we say meichen is mamish la'atzmei in comparison to midas, because midas is shaykh l'azula. But in the relative scheme of things, we've got to say that no, the midas are not exclusive to their relationship with the zulas. The etzem ha-midas are shayachin gam b'loi zulas. Rak she'pu'ulas ha-midas iyef she'b'loi zulas. V'chol pu'ula hari hu b'chinas sh'levam v'yat musay. It's something external to the person. But oid, moreover, the mashnem sherachim v'chasodim shayachim el azulas zeh ksha midas b'am b'chinas hagbol b'chinas chesed u'gvura. B'chol hagbol b'hamidas hari mitzad hakelim levad. Kanal shein bechinas chitzonius bechlal. When do the middays, when does a person's middays have the ability to connect or function as a pu'ula bishvil azulas, is when it's nislabish in kelim. And we've said before that the whole thing of gilui and the whole thing of kelim is the inyan chitzonius, and it's not the same thing as the inyan atzmi. Yeah.
Right.
ובאמס, גם קלולוס, אייס אבס, שנמשך מבחינת המידס, שעל זה נאמר כי הוא ציווה ונבראו בדרך מאלה וממילא לא מבחינת כוח הפועל בנפל חולי. When we talk about אייס אבס from מבחינת מידס, it's like a oifen of creation which is ונבראו, בדרך נפל. Happened by, it's not בדרך הסלאפשוס. It's not בדרך his askus. So רק מה שהוויה דזו, מדרך הכלים, יש אייס אבס מאלה וממילא. בכל המשוכי, רק מבחינת חיצייניס לבד, the whole thing is in חיצייני לגבי זו. So ve'im came, kol shekei ma shenimshach mizo b'malchus tzirich etzavit b'chines keich hapol b'nifel, so b'chines chitzenis to zol. So nishnar, when we're talking about the hamshachas ha'aris hazayin malchus l'tzirich binyana, which was the oifen harishain, then it's a ha'arich chitzenis from zah, that even in the yichud zon malchus, there's also only a ha'arich chitzenis. As we're saying in the oifen habes. Okay? So it wants to really ram home this notion of what is, which is, is nothing different conceptually to what we explained in Lovar Rova Miyam Shmeat Seres. This is how Malchus works. There we were talking about it, Lamal Yusa. How it can be a gewaltige thing. You can create a Yesh L'Dam Nifrad, and then then it can be tiny b'melucha when a person does avodah, but avodah has to be in the nisyenis, and it's going to be too difficult. It has to be the shittat mitzvah rachamim. But then we were talking about Malchus. This is how Malchus works, and this is our derech ashpos of Rab Talmud. And this is what we were saying at the beginning is that in the shittat mitzvah rachamim, it's going to be like the second mashal, right? Where you still have Malchus, but it's not ma'alim u'master at all. So Malchus can function in a way that's, the oasis of Malchus can be in a manner which is ma'alim u'master legamri, like we're describing now. When you have shittas mizarachamim, it can do like you the hashpot or a Talmud Gadol. You still need to put things in order and be masada things. So Malchus is masada everything, but it's not ma'alim u'master. That's going to be in the even our base, which we'll do next time. But here we're trying to just fit it. But these should be conceptually the way we've been explaining it until now, and we've been understanding what Malchus does till now.
Still don't go between this and this.
You don't get between the Oifen base of Ha'aras, Oifen Aleph and Oifen base of Ha'aras Zot in Malchus.
This is I can get Chatzain to Kiran, so it's like nothing. Like.
The relationship of Malchus to the Tesfiras Elyonis,
right,
is describable in two ways, two Oifanim, which aren't one or the other. They both happen. One happens after the other. The first thing that happens is that Malchus has to be developed, has to be binyan Malchus, has to be developed as a part of Shalom. And there we explained how when that happens, what is nimshach into Malchus is a ha'arich etzinis. After that, there's also a yichud of Zon Malchus. Once it becomes a part of Shalom. The tzorich, not the tzorich binyana, then it's l'tzorich hisavas ha'ilamis.
Okay.
And we said that also then, what is nimshach and Zon Malchus is a ha'arich etzinis. Because Zod's interest in hisavas ha'ilamis is a superficial interest. It's a chitzenistic interest. It's the gilu sheboy. Right. It's not what it is. It's not hemshekh of etz and of zah. It's a chitzenis of zah. So in both stages of the hamshekh of the tesfiras elyonis into Malchus, it's a ha'arich chitzenis, and then Malchus itself takes it even further. Is ma'alim u'master legamri through the isis adibur of Malchus, in which that then makes it plausible for there to be this avos eilam espiyah. So the nimtza, the mash nimshum v'chinas zah b'malchus aserich hisavos u'v'chinas emut levad, dainu rak eir chitzeni, v'gam zeh ha'eir hamuat bo b'chinas hislapshus b'malchus shemisalam mistater ha'eir ad she'eir shemeir b'chinas malchus eina k'mei shehaya kedem. Chuli. that is Hebrew for what I just said before. Yeah. So just like the Levana receives its aid from the Shemesh, even though it receives aid from the Shemesh, the aid of the Levana is not comparable to the aid of the Shemesh. The aid which shines off of the moon is an entirely different order of aid than the aid that was received. It's nishtana through the Levana. So similarly, just like Zah is nimshal to the Shemesh and Malchus to the Levana, so you have a comparable thing. That this aid, which we've said is an aid matzumtzum and an aid chitzoni, is itself nishtana. It becomes mislabish in Malchus, and then through the islabishes in Malchus, it gets nishtana through the oisis and the kelim. She'ena k'vim l'osei harishin. V'harizeh kamoi b'hamosh la'anal b'hashpoes harav letalmid. Cotton. Shekol hashpo yirak oid muat levad me'asech. V'gam ze miskashim lefi oifen gasus kliya makabel. So it's both. There's a few points here. The oid is an oid muat, and as addition, once it becomes, it's also an oid mugushim. That's the idea of how the oid is nishtana. Malchus da atzilus lebiyah. Good, right? I don't. It's. Yeah, so that's the Oifen Arishin. The Oifen Arishin of the way a Rav is mashpia to a Talmud was the way a Rav is mashpia to a Talmud Kotten, and that is comparable to the way that Malchus is mashpia to Eilam Biyah as an Eir Mitzumtzum B'Yoseh, which all fits into everything. That was the easy part, because this is all what we already know. This is how we always understood Malchus Atzilus, the way it was explained to us in the Levar Rav and B'Yimashmi Atzeres. The Eke Chidush of the Maimon that it's saying is that once you have in the Lashon of the Rebbe Maschil, once you have the Pakadeta Haaretz, the Peleg Elikim becomes Moli Mayim. This Peleg Elikim, this Malchus Atzilus, this Midas Adin, which is Chalkus and it's Bichim Zalim Behester and all these, that's this function. Shemesh Umagin Avai Elikim, that's what Elikim does. All of a sudden you become Moli Mayim. 1 second, how does this work? How can there be a Gilu Eir of Zon in Malchus, where Malchus is not Mailim Master at all? So what happens? How does it go? So it's going to be Al Derech Moshul, like the Hashpah of a Rav to a Talmud Gadol, where the whole thing, the whole Eir of Atzilus is conveyed and communicated with Biyah. The Hashpah in Biyah from Malchus is the entire Eir of Atzilus. Not b'derech Elam v'Hester, not b'derech Tzimtzum, not b'derech Emuat. The whole thing. And the function of Malchus is to make sure it becomes bislapshus, and it becomes in the right place, and it becomes and it's coordinated. It's not just it's not like an Eiris to Toy. So it doesn't become. Oh no, I know it's Eiris to take them. I'm saying it's not in a manner where the Eiris are disrupted. You don't be mavalvel the Talmud. You don't be mavalvel biyah. The biyah can be like biyah as we know it, and it can have a gilu of atzilus. Till now we say you can't have gilu. Not in biyah. Right? Is that what it says in Simon Chav? That dafki in atzilus you have you have the gilu eir of atzilus. In biyah you don't have that. What it's going to describe here is that in biyah you can also have that, even in biyah. And the Gilu of Atzilus. It's going to take him a while to explain that to you, because it's not an easy concept to process. But that's what we're going to explain. And that's going to be the Eifen HaBeis, which will take us through to the Oijei Shleim Peiches. If we're lucky, we might be able to do that in a share. Be nice.